I'd like to do a demonstration of one of my absolute favorite NLP techniques, parts integration, and more specifically, the visual squash version of parts integration, which combines the world of metaphor with an effective coaching process. Okay. Parts integration is designed specifically to help people create a sense of inner alignment. That sense of inner alignment is useful specifically to help people overcome things like procrastination. Because when there's procrastination, a part of them wants to do it and a part of them doesn't, and they never get around to doing it. Because the part that doesn't is winning, and then there's stress building up because another part wants to, and that's what we call procrastination. Bless you. Indecision. Can't make my mind up. Don't know what's best for me in this situation. Severe indecision, resulting in dilemma. I want to, but if I do, there's so many risks involved that I'm not willing to take those risks, therefore I'll stick to what I'm doing, even though what I'm doing is not fulfilling. When we feel terribly stuck, and the client talks to you like this, it's as if part of me is already there and part of me is still here, and I want to, but, and you see these hands going like this, and the ones talking about this part of the unconscious mind, and the ones talking about this part of the unconscious mind. And that's what's going on. There are parts of the unconscious mind in conflict, and each of them has their own values system. And how do parts come to be? Parts of the unconscious mind, kind of metaphorically, separate themselves from the whole of who you are as a fully integrated being. And they separate themselves because of significant emotional events in our life, where, based on a heavy experience, we form conclusions, we give meaning to an experience other than what is really going on, and that breeds beliefs that become self-fulfilling prophecies. And those parts that are responsible for that set of beliefs and the results that it's attracting into the person's life gets validated. And over time, it becomes part of that person's personality. We all do experience parts that don't get along so well. When we procrastinate, when we can't make our minds up, dilemmas, when we get stuck in paradoxes. Damned if we do and damned if we don't. Thanks, Magnus, for coming up to be our demonstration subject for parts integration. This is one of those wonderfully interesting techniques that will leave you in a space of bewilderment and probably curiosity, which has something to do with also feeling really good about something, and that really good feeling results in more choices, more options that you might not have conceived of before. And perhaps you've got some ideas, but you just weren't 100% certain about them. And this exercise will then enable you to have that sense of certainty. So as I describe that to you, does something come to mind where, a situation or an area in your life where you'd like to be able to achieve some more integration? Perhaps an area where you are procrastinating, not getting around to something, putting something off, or a part of you wants to do something and another part wants something else and you're not really sure what to do about it?
Yeah, I think taking departure of my, let's put it, a phase in business in Moscow Bay and moving to Cape Town and pursuing my other interests here, I'm definitely inclined to come and do this, but there is still feelings of making me feel connected to that, but it's not fully released.
It's not yet fully released. Okay, good.
So, yeah.
Well, the issue that you raise here is the ideal one for the situation, so thank you for coming up. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to have a conversation with these two parts of your unconscious mind, which you've so elegantly displayed to us already. Because you've got this thing and its interests, and you've got that one and its interests, and they seem completely, not connected. They both want different things, and it's tough for you, to sort of be stuck between the two. So let's see if we can do something constructive about that, and I don't know where this will lead to. All I know is that it will be an interesting experience that should offer you some more ways of looking and perceiving the situation. And with that, it's interesting what else comes to mind in terms of a direction you can move towards. Okay, great. So what I'd like to do is invite the part of you who is sort of, wanting departure from muscle by, but you're still there, and there are obviously reasons why you're still there. So it's not been able to sort of, break free from that. And if that part of you was to come out on your left hand, where you have already sort of indicated it is, and if you would be so kind as to put out your left hand, I'd like you to sort of just lift your hand so that it's comfortable, so that your upper arm is resting by your side, but your elbow is free. There you go. And I'd like you to focus your attention on the palm of that hand. Now, there is a part of you that is connected to muscle by, business there, and you'd like to depart from them, as you've said, but there's a challenge regarding that. Can you tell me a little bit about that challenge? And as you talk to me about that challenge, keeping your attention on that hand, I'd like you to notice how that part of you can be represented as a metaphor in your hand. A symbol, a picture, an image, a color, maybe a little muscle bay, or your work situation there. So tell me about it, and tell me about how that is a metaphor for you.
The actual issues would be financial and logistical, and the metaphorical figure for me would be a red camel.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd like you to clarify that red camel. It's like a camel, but just got an extra hump, or 2 or 3 or more. But it's red. It's red. All right. I'd like you to focus on that red camel in your hand, and sort of get a sense for the size and the weight and the feel and the look of the camel, and just identify that more clearly so that you can focus it in your hand. Now, what you've told us is that it's financial. What's important to that camel?
Well, I think acquiring a sense of independence from what it's been dealing with.
Independence from what it's been dealing with. Now, when it acquires independence from what it's been dealing with, what will that lead to for the camel?
It won't need to feel the need to grapple and reservoir.
Grapple and reservoir. It won't feel the need to grapple and reservoir. Excellent. And when it no longer feels the need to grapple and reservoir, what will that lead to for the camel?
More open mind that would lead to a freedom of, just freedom, sense of independence.
Wonderful. Now, when that camel achieves this more open mind, sense of independence and freedom, is there something even beyond that, perhaps, that it leads to?
Connection to the higher self.
And what would be important to the camel about experiencing that connection to the higher self?
Life purpose.
Life purpose. And that life purpose is?
Healing.
Healing. And when there has been complete and utter healing, what does that lead to for you?
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment. And as you consider fulfillment, how does fulfillment feel? How do you experience fulfillment?
Contented. Peaceful.
Contented, peaceful.
Centered.
Centered, wonderful. And when you are contented, peaceful and centered, what's important to you about that?
That it's a true value.
It is a true value.
True feeling.
A true value and true feeling of?
Of my inner representation.
And that inner representation is of?
Flowing of my purpose in this.
Of flowing in your purpose in this. Thank you. And that flowing of your purpose in this is what for you?
Being the most authentic and honest version of myself.
And when you're being the most authentic and honest version of yourself, what are you being? How are you experiencing yourself?
As real.
Real. And how do you know when you're being real?
Don't.
You don't. And when you're being real, and you don't know that you're being real, what's the intention behind that authenticity for you? What's ultimately the most important thing for this part?
Truth.
Truth. Well done. Is there anything beyond truth, or does truth ultimately summarize? That's right. Well done. Now, that part of you can stay where it is. I'd like to invite the other part out on your right hand. As you turn your attention now to the right hand. Very good. And as you bring that hand up, I'd like you to notice the other part of you that has a connection to Cape Town. And what does this part of you want? What's it responsible for? An open door. And is that the metaphor? An open door. So as you have that open door in your right hand, I'd like you to pay attention to it and feel it and sense it and notice it right there in the palm of your right hand. And what are the behaviours that that part of you, the open door, is responsible for? Action. And what's important to that part about action?
Making it valid, making it personal.
Making it valid, making it personal. And when it's making it valid and it's making it personal, what does that lead to for this part?
Following a calling.
Following a calling. Excellent, thank you. And when you're following that calling, where does it lead to for you?
A happier place.
A happier place. And how do you experience yourself in that happier place?
Not resistant.
Excellent. And when you're not resistant, how are you?
Synchronicity.
Synchronicity.
Being synchronized.
That's right, feeling synchronized. And when you're feeling synchronized, what's important to you about that?
Connected to the larger energy, larger connection of the universe.
That's right. You are connected to the larger energy, the larger the universe. And what does that ultimately lead to for you?
Connection to spirit, to wholeness.
Connection to spirit and wholeness. And what's important to you about connection to spirit and wholeness?
Authenticity.
That's right. Well done. Is there anything that authenticity leads to? Is there perhaps still an ultimate intention behind this? Or is that it? Well done. Now, do these two parts of you realize that what they both want is exactly the same thing? Authenticity. Isn't that interesting? Magnus, do you realize that what these two parts want is exactly the same thing? You don't.
No.
Isn't it interesting? Authenticity, yes. The red camel wants authenticity. The open door wants authenticity. Truth, connection to the higher self, to spirit. That's right. Do you realize that what they both ultimately want is exactly the same thing? Well done. Now, both of these parts have been responsible for different behaviors in your life. They both have skills and resources. They both have good value. Now I'd like to turn to the open door and recognize what that part of you is responsible for, what its inherent resources and value is, that it might like to share with the red camel, those resources that the red camel might like to receive. What would those be?
There is purpose in everything.
There is purpose in everything. There is purpose in everything. And I wonder how the open door can share the knowledge of there is purpose in everything with red camels so that they can move closer towards each other and begin to unify. And if you could imagine that open door is just sharing that knowledge, just kind of sending it across so that the red camel can receive that knowledge. What else is that the open door has in terms of resources that it might like to share, that the red camel would like to receive?
New opportunity.
New opportunity.
Embrace of possibility.
New opportunity and embrace of possibility. Is the red camel willing to have some of that? So let the red camel receive those resources, new opportunity, and the ability to embrace possibilities. That's right. That's right. And imagine these two parts just sharing in that way. Is there anything else that the red open door has inherent to itself in terms of resources that it can share with the red camel, that the red camel would like to have?
feeling of freedom.
The feeling of freedom. Would that be appropriate? Feeling of freedom to move. Would that be appropriate for the red camel? Just imagine that energetically they can start to share. Now, is there anything that the red camel might like to share with the open door? Any of its natural skills, any of its inherent resources that it might like to share with the open door so that they can move together and become one.
Walk through me.
Walk through me. I wonder what would happen if that red camel just walked all the way through the open door and found on the other side its authenticity. And what would need to happen so that that red camel could move towards the open door to find its authenticity? What would need to happen so that they could come together and share and merge?
It needs to know that it's free and that it can move.
Yes. So let the red camel know it is free and it can move, because that's really what it wants. That's right, just let it know. It can move in its own way, in its own time, because it is free. Now, is there anything else that the camel has in terms of resources, in terms of its natural skill, that it would like to share with the open door so that the open door can receive some of its value? And what might that be?
Collective thoughts, remembrance.
And I'd like you to imagine that that red camel can walk towards the red door and provide it with that collective memory and remembrance, so that it can walk through that door towards its authenticity. That's right. And just let those two metaphors come together in their own way, in their own time, sharing in their natural, inherent value until they're ready to merge and become one. And I wonder what new metaphor might begin to come to mind that resembles the best of both, that resembles the integration of red camel and open door as they merge more and more. What new metaphor would you like to form in that space that represents to you their unification, their integration? A red door. Wonderful. I'd like you to see that red door, the best of both, the merging, the coming together. And when you're completely ready to integrate fully, I'd like you to see that red door right there, between the palms of both hands. One red door, that's right. Bring them together. Let them become one. Let them become one. Completely whole and integrated. A representation of the red door. That's right. And when you're ready, that's right, to fully integrate, you can bring those hands totally together now and create that red door in the palm of your hands. That's right. Just let it happen in its own way, taking all the time you need. That's right. And feel what you feel, and notice what you notice, and just let it happen. That's right. And when you're ready to merge them completely, create the red door now. That's right. Let them integrate completely. That's right. Well done. Now take that integration, feel it throughout your body, pull it into your heart, Pull it into your heart, put your hands to your chest, and let it come into your heart space, and breathe it in to your entire being. The red door that represents your authenticity, your higher self, freedom. That's right. And take all the time you need now to fully integrate and merge with a new order. And notice what you notice throughout your body. And notice what you notice in your mind. And let things settle down. That's right. And when the integration is complete, then it will be effortless for you to once again part your hands and recognize that it's merged within you now. So that your hands are once again your hands. And there's a new representation within you that represents the unification of those two former parts that are now whole within you. And you can connect with that inside yourself in a new way now. A new representation. The best of both. That's right. That's right. Taking all the time you need. And once again, you can let your hands go back down to their natural resting position. And just feel what's happening inside your body. And sometimes it's interesting because a short time may feel like a long time. And time can just dissolve. Like sand that passes through an hourglass, hour after hour. And your unconscious mind can take all the hours it needs, or so it seems, to fully integrate this in the next second or two. Excellent. Now, when you're complete with this process, and your integration has completely settled within you, so that some new ideas are coming to mind about how you'd like to perceive things now in light of the change that you're going through to a new experience on the other side. I don't know what threshold you're about to enter that marks a whole new perception and a whole new feeling and a whole new way of approaching that situation which used to be a challenge for you now, thinking about it differently and noticing what comes to mind and noticing how that makes you feel. And when something constructive has bubbled up into your awareness, then you can let it bubble up to your eyelids so that they feel like bubbling all the way open. And I'll know that you're done when you're looking at me with a little smile on your face, or a big one if you insist. Well done. Excellent, great job. Magnus, there was something that you had in mind when you came up to do such an excellent demonstration as you have. Now, as you think about that situation now, do you already have any ways of looking at it that are different from how they were before?
It's going to sound funny, but I have a red wall in my apartment in Musselburgh.
Ah.
And it's got... The colour red is a significant colour for me. And once I started entertaining the thought of moving, I said, I'll pack in my red paint and I'll paint another wall red. And somehow the shift felt that I don't need the red wall. I've walked through the red door now. and somehow it feels to me that the wall can be blue now, it's fine. And it's been something that's been very important for me, so I don't know how that translates.
I'm sure it'll be a translator.
But I will have a red door.
Oh yes.
Definitely.
Excellent, there's a red door. You know, the interesting thing about red is it tends to, generally speaking, it might mean something completely different to you, but it tends to stop a lot of people. You know, we're trained that way. When you see a red light, what do? Hit the brakes, don't you? So I wonder what colour you'd like to paint it now. Go for it, boy. In a nutshell, here's what you're going to do. You're going to ask somebody what conflict are they having in their life in terms of indecision or procrastination. You know, do they feel drawn towards one thing and drawn towards another in a particular area, and that leaves them stuck or indecisive? That would be the primary thing to use this approach for. There are others, but let's go with that primary approach for now. Okay? So what you want to look out for is when the client's talking to you, they're doing this kind of gesture. Well, there's something on this side and something on that side. You sometimes see it in their feet. But we'll always look out for that, and even if we don't, but they do speak about it in terms of, well, part of me does and another part of me does that and whatever. Well, part of me wants to do it and another part of me doesn't. And it brings up fear, so I never take action. Then you're going to invite one part out onto one hand, and you say, I'd like you to just call that part out into that hand. And, you know, if we could represent it as a metaphor, an image, anything, a symbol, it could be whatever you like. What might you like to represent it as in the palm of that hand? Feel it, see it, sense it over there. Now, what are the behaviors that this part is responsible for? And you chunk up, okay? You've now got chunking up language. Remember your hierarchy of ideas? Chunk up. What's the intention behind its behavior? The client gives you an answer. You repeat back their precise words. It lights up the same neural network, remember? Whatever the answer they give you, you might ask something like, and what's important to the part about that? Whatever answer they give you, you might ask something like, what's important, or, oh, and what's the intention behind that? Whatever answer they give you, you repeat, and where does that lead to for you? What's important to you? Where does that lead to? What's the intention behind that? The client gives you a few things. You repeat back all the words and you say, okay, so when you've got security, safety, and whatever, what does that lead to for you? And you keep chunking up until you get to a single word or phrase that you can no longer chunk up on. And you'll know that you can no longer chunk up when they start repeating things. Sometimes you'll get to love, freedom, peace, happiness, a positively stated intention after just 2 questions. But you're not happy with that, so you ask some more, and then the person backtracks, and they come back to safety and security. Safety and security, what kind of a motivation is that? It's a motivation away from things they don't want to experience. So this must always be a towards positive stated thing, right? So I got love, and because I'm not happy that the client went there so fast, I need to do more work, don't I? This is what I'm getting paid for. So I ask some more questions, and they go back to some negatives, and I ask them some more questions, and then they come back to love or whatever it might have been. Fine, okay, now I'm happy. I just needed to prove to myself as a therapist that the client went there that fast. Clients are amazing, they will go that fast. Okay, I asked more questions than I needed to in the demonstration as a way of proving the point. That's how you chunk up, and you persist. So you get to a positively stated value. Then we turn our attention to the other hand. What metaphor wants to come out that represents what this part wants in the person's life? What behaviors is that part responsible for? What metaphor is it? What's the intention behind that? And you chunk up. And you keep chunking until you get something that is either identical to what you elicited here or highly compatible. Highly compatible is fine. Then you ask the 2 parts. Do you, the 2 parts, recognize that what you both want is identical or highly compatible? We're looking for an unconscious head nod at this stage because I've just asked a question to the unconscious mind. I then address my client by their name and I say, do you, Magnus, identify that what these 2 want are exactly the same thing? I'm now asking the conscious mind. This whole exercise is designed to create coherence between the conscious and unconscious minds. I want the conscious mind a little bit involved here. Okay? First time he said no. Did it come as a bit of a surprise? That actually it was no at first. Do you remember that part?
Yeah. I took the question and then broke my attention when I realized I said no.
That is a bit weird. So all I did was I came back. Well, this is what this one has said is its highest intention, and this is what this one has said is its highest intention. Do you realize it now? So the conscious mind goes, oh yeah, wow. Okay, great. Now we can integrate. So the integration begins with what are the resources, natural inherent skills or abilities that one part has that it can share with the other part, that the other part would like to have. And the client tells you what that is, hypnotically, And just go ahead and imagine them sharing it, at which point I start to model them coming together with my hands slowly. And I ask again, and then I'll ask this one, what does it have in terms of resources, natural inherent skills and abilities that it would like to share with this one, that this one would like to receive? And then I say to the client, just imagine them sharing that in your own way as I model hands coming together. At which point I start to make suggestions about unification, about integration, about coming together, about becoming one, about returning to wholeness. All sorts of indirect suggestions prompting integration. While I'm going there with my hands too. Okay? And you start to see unconscious movements bringing that integration. And it takes all the time it needs to take until they're ready to merge. Merge in whatever way they need to merge. At which point I say, and just bring that into your heart. And let that just float into your heart and throughout your entire being. And just notice what you notice as the integration settles within you. And then you reorient the client, test, you work afterwards, and you're done. Okay. Test is, just think about the situation now. What are you noticing differently? Okay. That's the nutshell. My future pace in this case was checking that old thing, and then I was happy with the red light metaphor. He's going in a direction, and because we didn't elicit a deliberate outcome, which I can now future pace towards. Okay, the exercise was done with the motivation to create some more clarity about an issue. So what do I have to future pace on? Nothing in particular. My future pace is calibrating to my client. Are they congruent? Is the client like, I've got something. It's metaphoric? Well, guess what? We've just done a complete metaphoric process. And I'm fine with that because I know when you create a metaphoric shift, it bubbles up into conscious awareness in constructive ways. So I'm calibrating. My future pace is just the calibration to, is he congruent? Is something positive happened? Does that give him some new ways of perceiving the situation? In a real therapeutic situation, you'll always elicit an issue and an outcome before you start. You already know that, though, don't you? Follow your internal guidance system. Be in rapport with your client. Chunk up on the parts and bring them together in whatever way naturally occurs to you as the most ecological and appropriate thing to do.